The 1986 Chernobyl nuclear accident was a turning point in the social and political aspects of nuclear power. This disaster remodeled the global opinion on nuclear power, crippled the lives of those around the plant, and was a key factor in the Soviet Union's downfall. It was a warm summer night in April of 1986. The small town of Pripyat slept peacefully just 3 kilometers away from the Chernobyl nuclear plant, oblivious to the immense danger they were in. At this moment, an unthinkable anomaly had occurred within the depths of Reactor 4. At 1:23, the reactor exploded in 2 huge blasts, spewing out superheated metal and a large amount of radioactive clouds. Workers scrambled to extinguish the molten inferno raging within the reactor, unaware of the deadly level of radiation.
The Chernobyl disaster was the result of many actions made and shortcuts taken throughout the decades the Soviet Union, or USSR, existed, but also ignorant actions of the test officials just minutes before the disaster. Through mistakes small and large, this disaster left a lasting scar in history with impacts affecting millions to this day.
The Soviet Union was a powerhouse. In its short existence, it had become a nuclear superpower through its atomic program. According to Stalin, it was not worth spending time and effort on small-scale work, and that they should conduct the work broadly, on a Russian scale. Thus, developing an atomic weapon became the nation's highest priority, rivaling even the reconstruction of the Soviet motherland after the Second World War. From the beginning, safety was considered unimportant and secondary to the design, and because creating nuclear weapons was treated as central security, any deaths were treated as reasonable trade-offs. As A.M. Petrosians commented in the Moscow Chernobyl press conference, science requires victims. Additionally, through the utilization of propaganda, every citizen was convinced atomic energy was perfectly safe. Nuclear power stations are like stars that shine all day, remarked academician M.A. Styrkovich. We shall sow them all over the land. They are perfectly safe. Although the design flaws of the reactors were well known to Moscow, any criticism of nuclear power was treated as an attack on science and considered treason. Of course, with all these issues, many accidents arose due to mismanagement and negligence of proper safety precautions. After decades of lies and cover-ups, the Soviet Union was about to have their past mistakes catch up to them.
Ironically, the disaster at Chernobyl occurred during a test on reactor safety systems. The purpose of the test was to see if the turbine's momentum could power the reactor during a grid blackout. After multiple failed attempts, the plant manager Viktor Brukhanov decided to give the test another go. The test was to be conducted by the plant's day shift on April 26th, but unfortunately was postponed due to extra power demands from Kiev. This meant the test had to be undertaken by the night shift, who had not been properly instructed. At 23:10, the test got permission to proceed. While setting up for the test, an operator error caused the power level to plummet. To combat this, the operators pulled an excessive amount of control rods, going against safety procedures. This breach in safety guidelines rendered the reactor unstable and prone to runaway. Eventually, the reactor power was raised to 200 megawatts, still far below the 700 required, but at 123.4, the test began anyway. All external power to the reactor was shut off, and unseen heat began to build up. At 1:23 and 40 seconds, the test had ended successfully with the press of the AZ-5 emergency reactor shutdown button. This should have ended the test, but due to the AZ-5 emergency rod's graphite tip, it did the opposite. Graphite has the effect of accelerating reaction and was one of the RBMK-1000's design flaws. Instead of shutting down the reactor, the rods entering the core triggered a reactor runaway. Fuel elements rapidly overheated and exploded, jamming the control rods and preventing them from entering the core. The pressure was too much for the reactor, and it blew the 1,000-ton lid off the top of the reactor. A few seconds later, a larger hydrogen explosion blew the walls around the reactor apart, killing 2 workers instantly. Radioactive clouds were blasted high into the sky, falling into neighboring countries as radioactive precipitation. At 1:26, Primary Fire Station Number 2 received a frantic call from the Chernobyl power plant. The operator frantically called for help, saying, quote, "Call everybody, everybody." 2 minutes later, firefighters arrived at the scene of the disaster. They wore minimal protective gear and were unaware of the deadly level of radiation around them. Sand and boron were dumped into the burning reactor in an attempt to slow radioactive discharge and put out the fires. After foreign intelligence detected the incident, the Soviets concluded that they could no longer keep this incident under wraps. 36 hours after the explosion, orders were given to evacuate the town of Pripyat.
Атомной электростанции в городе Припяти складывается неблагоприятная радиационная обстановка. С целью обеспечения полной безопасности людей и в первую очередь детей возникает необходимость провести
800,000 workers, called liquidators, were brought in to decontaminate the site by hand. Construction began on a containment structure to conceal the crippled core. After months of hard, deadly work, it was complete. Though this marked a milestone in the cleanup of the disaster, it was only the start of its consequences.
The liquidators who have been sent in to deal with the disaster's aftermath were falling fatally ill. This sickness was not caused by bacteria or viruses, but by the large amount of radiation they had been exposed to. Within a month, over 120 lay dead, buried in lead-lined coffins. The radiation ravaged them, destroying their bone marrow and other vital organs, leaving the survivors with life-altering disabilities. The disaster became a catastrophic turning point in their now short lives. Although Chernobyl is regarded as the deadliest nuclear accident in history, the International Atomic Energy Agency, or the IAEA, and other international institutes provide an alternate opinion, claiming that the effects of the disaster were highly overplayed. According to their study, many health effects experienced were incorrectly attributed to the disaster, and that the only major effect is the amount of thyroid cancer cases in children, due to the radioactive iodine-131. Though the study is highly regarded, many private groups criticize it, claiming the Soviets were cooperating with the study to make the effects of the disaster seem negligible. Even before Chernobyl, the Soviet Union's future looked bleak. Hidden cracks were forming, only deepening with the ascension of Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev. Under Gorbachev, the policy Glasnost was implemented, introducing government openness. This policy, although intended to repair the falling Union, did nothing but accelerate its demise. The Soviet government ignored Glasnost when the disaster occurred and denied the severity of the accident. Because the government had gone against their word of openness, the citizens were outraged. Attempting to stay in control, the government increased the safety of the RBMKs by increasing the amount of control rods and creating an improved safety protocol. However, it wasn't enough to satisfy the populace, and many reactor projects were cancelled. This inevitably marked the beginning of the end. 5 years after the disaster, in August of 1991, Gorbachev was arrested in a bold attempt to gain power within the government. 2 days later, Gorbachev returned. By then, the citizens had lost all their trust in the government. Protests and rebellions transpired all over the USSR, and after 4 months of protests, the once proud Union collapsed, leaving 15 independent countries free from the iron grasp of its dictatorship, with Chernobyl marking a turning point in the Union's history and a key factor of its demise. Many impacts are still being felt today. In America, Chernobyl had a larger impact on the opinion of the populace than even 3 Mile Island, a local event. According to an ABC poll, 78% of the 1.5 thousand people interviewed said they opposed nuclear power, a big leap from when only 25% opposed nuclear power in the 1970s, as their opinion was remodeled in relation to the accident. Outside the US, larger changes are seen. In the 32 years before Chernobyl, 409 reactors were constructed globally. In contrast, in the 3 decades afterward, only 194 were built, with Germany canceling more than building. Due to the public outcry after the incident, there are doubts that many new nuclear power stations will be built in the decades to follow, and though some people have hope, many believe Chernobyl only showed mankind has no way of safely harnessing the destructive power within the atom. As Mikhail Gorbachev stated, Chernobyl opened my eyes like nothing else.
In 1986, a disaster shocked the world. This atomic incident was a significant turning point in many facets of nuclear energy and marked the end of a world power. People across many countries were crippled, rooted from the attempt to control an underestimated force that still affects the creation of new plants today. As theologian Paul Ramsey put it, men ought not to play God.